to protect monuments, but they have a lot to do with history of the city. These people can live now because of those heroes. In the village of Sursko-Litovskaya, the local authorities and radicals took down a memorial plate dedicated to residents who fought with Nazi invaders. In the village of Karvagi, the order of the war from the memorial was taken down. It was dedicated to the liberators from Nazis. They even came to the memorial to Peter I in Poltava. It was erected in 1849. It was erected in 1849, and it endured all the eras and epochs, the shift of historic paradigms, cold and hot wars. But it didn't endure Neo-Banderovitz. It was taken down. But their aim to forget the history of Russia won't be achieved. All these memorials will be revived. There's no doubt about it. Now, despite the fact that I quoted a lot of crazy things, I would like to draw your attention, because no one can really believe this. They now get to Yuri Gagarin. They destroyed the memorials to Catherine II, Grigory Potemkin, within their fight with the Soviet past. They destroyed the monument to Catherine II while fighting the Soviet past. Can you hear that? There's information in the media that nationalists from the movement Decolonization.Ukraine demanded to take down the plate with Yuri Gagarin with the words in Russian language. This street is called in honor of the first cosmonaut on the Earth, a hero of the USSR, Yuri Gagarin. They are taking down monuments to people, but what gives all these acts a special sense of craziness? They wanted to rewrite the biography of an outstanding Soviet designer, Sergei Krylov. Do you remember that? How can these things happen in one head at the same time? They want to declare this person to be included in the Ukrainian history, and after that they want Yuri Gagarin to be removed completely, despite the clear tie between these two people. But it's a disease. These facts confirm the relevance of the special military operation to denazify and demilitarize Ukraine and to remove threats coming from its territory. All of these aims will be achieved, as our authorities said many times. Let's move on to the next topic, though quite close to this one. I'm sorry. We noted a number of publications about more military preparations of Norway in the north. Those steps concern not only the inland part of Norway, but also the archipelago of Spitsbergen that has special international legal status. On May 21st, Prime Minister of Norway said that there is some correction of the military activities. It is more active. We see these words of the Prime Minister as another measure aimed to blur the Norway's policy to limit themselves on foreign military presence and activities on the territory of the country. And we cannot agree with that. First, Oslo cannot make any independent decisions here because all the foreign and defense policy of Norway is aimed at achieving goals of NATO. One more example of this is the establishment in the city of Bodø, NATO, a united center of NATO air operations. Second, any steps of the Norwegian leadership, especially facilitating escalation tensions in pre-border regions, without any doubt, will be taken into account in our military and political planning and will have negative consequences for Russian-Norway relations. We have to say that Norway is aimed to involve the Spitsbergen archipelago in the military and political planning of NATO. On May 12th through 14th, the archipelago saw the numerous delegation of the Parliamentary Assembly of NATO, about 40 representatives from 20 countries of the alliance. On May 20th, the Norway reconnaissance plane Boeing P-8A Poseidon drilled approaching the airport of Longyearbyen, that is of purely civilian status. Under the Spitsbergen Treaty of 1920, Norway is committed not to create and to prevent the infrastructure that can be used for military purposes. And all these actions of the Norwegian authorities implemented to ensure their security in reality lead to high military activities close to the Russian borders. We underline that the responsibility for the peaceful development of the polar area belongs first of all to the Arctic states. More about NATO. We follow closely the preparations of the collective West and exercises. This confirms the idea about aggressive stance of NATO that wants to completely exploit the territory of the new member states, in Finland in this case. A vivid example is the involvement of ships and soldiers from Germany, Sweden and Estonia to the exercises Narrow Waters 25. Now the Finnish authorities agree to further escalation on the Russian borders. They want this. They spent billions from their budget to the imposed narratives from the outside. They have internal issues, first of all, in social and economic sphere, but the authorities ignore this completely. There's an impression that they're pushed to some kind of precipice and they don't even understand where they're moving. It's up to the people of Finland to decide, but we understand how the information space there is blocked. And a lot of people don't really understand what's going on and what is happening. The collective West prompt them to total confrontation with Russia that contradict their root interests.
Now let's talk about Afghanistan. On May 25th, a humanitarian aid batch arrived. 1,280 tons of wheat flour. It was provided by Russia as an additional contribution to the World Food Program Foundation. This flour will be distributed among the residents in need of Afghanistan. The work to give humanitarian assistance to the friendly Afghan people will be continued. We have also noted two new statistics on criminals committed by Westerners in Afghanistan. The author of the publication is Deputy Head of the Asian Branch of Human Rights Watch, Patricia Gossman. She cites statistics of investigation of extrajudicial killings of civilian Afghans committed by foreign servicemen. Governments of Western countries, despite the public pressure, protract judicial investigation of crimes committed during the occupation of Afghanistan, not to mention compensation for the families of victims. In particular, out of 19 Australian servicemen implicated in the case of killings, including the ones of civilian residents, only one was prosecuted. As far as Great Britain goes, information was distributed there in Britain. Well, there was no investigation of such cases there. On our part, we welcome all calls of human rights defenders who require a proper retaliation for crimes committed by Western servicemen during the occupation of Afghanistan and prosecute all those responsible. They have created quasi-structures, international criminal courts, and they create agenda for these quasi-structures, and they tell stories. Here are the facts. You can see the victims, their families, and we have evidence that we know those who killed Afghans. We have statistics, dates, everything has been supported by relevant documents, but no one is interested in looking at them. Why? Well, to a larger extent because they are led or guided by segregation logic. There are some people who deserve to be protected by human rights and those who shouldn't even know that they have rights. And secondly, any reason, be it international, legal reason, domestically or internationally, is used not to achieve justice, not to seek truth, not to implement the legislation in practice, but only to make it follow the line of geopolitical aspirations. Now, South Sudan, we saw escalation of tensions. It causes deep concern. We see clashes that lead to casualties, including among civilians. The situation is exacerbated by this ethnic component. We believe that the solution by force is not possible. A new round of escalation of armed confrontation in South Sudan is a challenge for the whole sub-region. It is full to the brim with negative factors. These are domestic conflicts in Sudan and Somalia, in the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, instability in the African Great Lakes and in the Horn of Africa, geographical proximity to the Sahel region with a whole number of problems. Thus, prerequisites are created for wide destabilization in the conditions of transparency of the borders. It contributes to a transfer of of operatives and illicit arms trade and other criminal activities. It's very important to look at the efforts of African community to peacefully end block military and political crisis in South Sudan. We hope that the South Sudanese sides will support African partners' help and will show political wisdom and will help to curb the further escalation of the armed conflict and return to updated agreement and peaceful settlements of conflict of the Republic of South Sudan of September 12, 2018. Now let's go back to the celebration of the great victory in the Great Patriotic War. Now let's see what happened on May 9th with our foreign partners and allies. Like-minded countries celebrated the 80th anniversary of the great victory. Well, let's see how our foreign allies in the anti-Hitler coalition celebrated this event. Well, you saw this. For example, for Global Affairs Canada was not really happy to celebrate this event and propose its own version of the Victory Day. Well, excuse me, how is that possible? How can they have their own version of the Victory Day? Well, they celebrated the Victory Day. They had proper legislation. We receive foreign guests who, in line with the historical truth, reaffirm their approaches towards what is a objective truth. What kind of a known version of the victory can they have? They deliberately distort the memory of the victory of the war. It demonstrates their deep ignorance and their evil intentions. They discredit the Canadian side, first and foremost, who is guided by momentous notions, and they're following their Russophobic line against themselves. So, of course, it especially outrageous because official Ottawa is allowing itself slanderous allegations. At the same time, at the National Parliament, they give a standing ovation to the Nazi collaborationist of the 14th Waffen Grenadier Division of the SS 1st Galician, Yaroslav Gunko. Annually, Canada votes against the resolution of the General Assembly on the combating the glorification of Nazism. The same Canada is telling us that we are not celebrating the 9th of May properly. Well, let me tell you that Canada does not declassify Library and Archives Canada's lists of Nazi criminals and their henchmen who found safe haven in Canada. Well, they should look at themselves and maybe they'll have an answer to their questions. And of course, another contribution was made by Canadian ambassador to Moscow, Sarah Taylor. She wasn't satisfied with those offensive Russophobic commentaries after the flower-laying ceremony at the Motherland Monument at the Piskarovsky Memorial Cemetery in St. Petersburg. In social networks, we heard an appeal coming from her, and I am quoting her. Well, excuse me, but I should do it, but one has to understand what they're infected with. So she said, and I'm quoting it, the Canadian ambassador, the Russians usurped the right to the victory. Well, have you rescued a single monument dedicated to the heroes of the Second World War? Have you posted anything on the social media to condemn barbaric destructions of the tombstones dedicated to the soldiers who fought against Nazism on the European continent? Have you done or said anything? When monuments were destroyed, memorials, burial sites, including in Ukraine, which you are a patron of, well, not a single time. That's why you have no right to utter such things. We are preserving the historical truth. And we are doing it for those who are guided by common sense, for future generations on different continents who will recover from that infections, from this historical amnesia, and they will want to learn what the truth is. The Canadian side should stop rewriting the history of the Second World War, should abstain from provocative rhetoric and focus on the objective evaluation of the past. The Day of Victory is not a subject for political speculations. It's a symbol of unity, decisiveness against any manifestation of Nazism, fascism, and other hatred towards human beings, and this memory about the heroism and self-sacrifice of the Soviet people against Hitlerism is sacred, and any attempts to vilify it will be decisively curbed. I told you that we will give you examples to compare our celebrations of May 9th or May 8th, is what they celebrate in Europe, the Day of Liberation from Fascism. Well, we'll compare those adequate manifestations of celebrations to anti-festivities of the victory over Nazism. Estonia, May 11th, Tallinn, 2025, the epicenter of the 80th anniversary of the victory. Our compatriots brought flowers to a long-suffering monument to Alosha. Well, they found a white spot and insulting inscription on the sculpture. The Foreign Ministry of Estonia received a note with a request to bring those guilty to justice and take measures. Overnight into May 9th in Vilnius, unidentified persons poured red paint on the sculpture of soldiers and the tombstone on the MAKHACHKALA cemetery. On the eve of the Day of Victory, vandals desecrated the mass grave in the city of Uten. A part of the date, 1941, was covered with black paint, and they wrote 39 close to this inscription, the place of death of hero of the Soviet Union, Lieutenant Yefim Belinsky, close to the city of Klaipeda, is another example. The concrete tomb was smeared with mud. They desecrated the hero. They desecrated themselves by doing that. Germany, one of the most cynical incidents happened in Bavaria. Compatriots residing in Munich reported that from the wreaths that were laid on May 6th to the monument on the foreign execution site of SS in Herbertshausen, close to the Hau Memorial site, that were laid by Ambassador of Russia and Consul Generals of Russia and Belarus. Ribbons were ripped off and removed. What did you do with those ribbons? Where did you put them? It turned out that personally director of the Hau Memorial Complex, Gabriele Hammerman, is behind all of this. She introduced a ban on using national symbols of Russia and Belarus and gave an order to rip off the ribbons. That was the way when Jews were marked with yellow stars in Germany. Then, in the following decades, they were treated through a special program, but not everybody was recovered. Consulate General in Bonn sent to the local police a statement to initiate criminal proceedings on vandalism and bring perpetrators to justice. This is lawlessness aimed at denial and rewriting history. It's desecration of the memory of victims of Nazism, justification and approval of crimes of Adolf Hitler and his henchmen, mockery of state symbols of the country, whose diplomatic representatives are accredited in Germany in accordance with the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. It gives DIP missions and consular institutions comprehensive immunity and right to use their national symbols without any limitations. But somebody in Germany made up their mind to ban this. According to current situation, well, they used to mark us in concentration camps with red triangles. They gave us, they saw badges with inscriptions Austin, SU, and others, well, they continue to do that. They remove any reminders, including ribbons from diplomatic wreaths to anonymize their memory. But we remember Bulgaria, May 6th, 10th, and 11th on the monument of the at the mass grave in Lozinet, insulting inscriptions were made. Responsibility were claimed by members of neo-Nazi formation, National Legion of Bulgarian Youths, Decommunization BG group, and initiators of annual procession to honor the accomplice of Hitler, Hristo Lukov from pro-fascist movement, the Bulgarian National Union. On May 8th, a monument to Red Army soldier Kalinin in the settlement of Chilopich of the Sofia region was desecrated. On May 9th, a memorial plaque in the settlement of Haskova was covered with paint. It was put up by the Russian club. The Czech Republic, the city of Teplice. If not for the Russian army, it would not be even a German city of Teplice. It just wouldn't exist. It was liberated on May 7th, 1945 by the 10th Guards Tank Corps. Teplice is known for the fact that in 1939, well, somebody remembered in Europe after Germany exceeded the Sudetenland in Germany as a result of the Munich conspiracy. One with the largest synagogues in Czechoslovakia was burned down during the liberation day on May 7th. An act of flagrant vandalism was committed with regards to the monument of the Red Army. From the pedestal, the sculpture was knocked off and destroyed, dedicated to Soviet hero. The investigative committee of Russia, Alexander Bastrykin, initiated the criminal case on desecration of the memorial. We hope that they will be punished. Copenhagen, Denmark, on May 9th, on the Bispebjerg cemetery. A monument was sprayed. It was dedicated to Soviet soldiers. Every act of vandalism is another brown spot of reviving fascism on the map of the European Union. We'll just wait a bit, and the U.S. will not be able to wash off this shame. The Russian embassy returned to Danish authorities with the requirement to investigate this act of vandalism and to bring those guilty to justice. Today, the Russian Foreign Ministry will publish on this official website a report on the desecration of official monuments dedicated to those who fought against fascism and Nazism. It will be published in both Russian and English. It is dedicated to activities, to acts of certain states. I just gave you facts behind which are vandals and other criminals, crazy people. This report will give an assessment to the acts of states themselves. First and foremost, the Baltic states, Poland, Ukraine, who under the pretext of the special military operation conducted by Russia to intensify, demilitarize Ukraine and protect the population of Donbass, destroy the Russian Soviet memorial heritage and their own heritage as well, desecration to the fallen. They destroy ideological enemies, and all these manifestations became commonplace in the countries that listed in this report.
They cover with the laws of the so-called decommunization. They demolish the memorials dedicated to Soviet soldiers. Their governments are now trying to consolidate the anti-Russian front at the same time. Why this has nothing to do with the decommunization? It is different. They are reviving the neo-Nazis because simultaneously with the demolition of the monuments to the heroes of the Second World War, they erect monuments to Nazi criminals. They enshrine on the legislative level that they protect them, and the actions of activists against monuments to the Nazis are persecuted, and they are clearing up the historical memory. In terms of the content, this document is based on the provisions of the theme-related resolution of the UN General Assembly, the fight against the glorification of the Nazism. The resolution underlines that the General Assembly is deeply concerned with the numerous attempts to desecrate and to demolish the monuments, to transfer and to exhumate the remnants of the soldiers. The UN General Assembly, as well as the resolution, decisively condemns the incidents which have to do with the glorification and the propaganda of the Nazism. Please apologize me. Covering the monuments with drawings, is it a norm? Russia, as the country which suffered numerous losses in the Second World War and the Great Patriotic War, will never let anyone to forget the lessons of the past. Our country, together with our allies and together with the like-minded states, will continue its targeted activities in order to prevent the distortion of historical truth, including the liberation of the Central and Eastern Europe from Nazism. We are not going to publish only this report. We will also support the activities of the civil society simultaneously with the public structures, they themselves on their own, based on their moral values, perhaps based on their family history, or just the perception that one must fight for the good. They carry out these efforts and these activities. All what they do, the factual materials that they gather and collect, we will support them in this endeavor. The other day, on June the 12th, we will celebrate the 70th anniversary of the space launching facility Baikonur. It was the place where the humanity made a step into the outer step. We congratulate everyone who has to do with this event. It won't be an exaggeration to say that on Earth there is no one who doesn't know what Baikonur is. It was the place where the first artificial satellite was launched, as well as the first piloted flight, which was carried out by the Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin. Baikonur is the largest space launching facility in the world. Around 100.5 thousand cosmonauts and astronauts from the USSR, Russia, and other states were launched to outer space, as well as space shuttles as Vostok, Voskhod, Soyuz, and others. Orbital stations Salyut, Mir, and others were sent in outer space as well. And Baikonur is involved in international cooperation as part of the International Space Station. Baikonur has a very important international meaning and importance. This is a symbol of many-year friendship and partnership with the full respect of all norms and principles of international outer space law. On June the 12th, the Russian embassy in Beijing will organize a reception dedicated to the Day of Russia. Ambassadors, authorities of the People's China Republic are invited, as well as other representatives. As part of the event, the National Philharmonia Orchestra of Russia will perform by the Great Wall of China, led by Vladimir Spivakov. The program will include the music by outstanding Russian and Chinese composers. At the same time, from June 12 to June 15, they will open the Moscow Seasons in Beijing at the central street of Beijing, which are organized as a part of the cross-cultural years of Russia and China. Everyone will be able to attend the exhibit, the Fair of Moscow Souvenirs, to enjoy the performance of different artists and performers. The Tourist Information Center will open its doors these days. Everyone will be able to get to know the Russian capital, to learn about its rich cultural and historical variety. On June the 13th, China will host the conference, The Cities of the Future, Synergy of Strategic Partnership between Moscow and Beijing, where the participants will discuss the sharing of expertise and cooperation. Now I'm ready to answer your questions. Let us start with the hosts. RGBK Dagestan, are you with us? Will you please turn on the microphone? I cannot hear you. Well, colleagues, please tell me. Good afternoon. I apologize. Please speak up, if you will. Dagestan is a region with a strong cultural code and ties with the Islamic world. Do you have plans to more actively use the potential of these regions in Russian foreign policy, especially in the East? I have already mentioned this in my introductory remarks. Of course, yes. And it will be a pleasure for me to reiterate that Dagestan is a unique region of Russia, and this is the embodiment of the century-long synthesis of cultures, where the Islamic tradition coexists with other religions. It is harmonically intertwined with the Russian state values, and this example can serve as an important component when we are seeking an answer to the question in many points of the world. How can we combine this? How can we combine this which cannot be combined according to the point of view of some others? How could these religions coexist in this harmonic way, in this harmonic manner? Just wait a second. I will be frank. Yesterday, I tried to ask questions, not without provocations, the tour guides, the local people. What culture dominates the region? I did this from many different sides, and to all provocations, I received only one reply. We are Dagestan. And when I asked questions about art, about the language, about the culture, please tell me, perhaps there is a dominating component. No, there was only one word: synergy and coexistence. It is remarkable, because these were improvised dialogues. They were not prepared ones. I was trying to understand, I was trying to figure out, and people do have this attitude towards their culture and towards the unique character, unique features of the region from this very point of view. And I believe that this experience can be borrowed, and it can serve as a role model for those who are trying to understand in what way this can be done. This does not mean that we have no problems, that we did not have them, or we won't have them. This is a live organism, and this is a development which we are seeing about the ways to overcome these problems. This does not only deserve our attention, but this can be used as an example of success. The historic proximity to the Islamic states of the East creates a promising and conducive environment for developing inter-civilizational dialogue between the regions of the Russian Federation. For instance, in September 2024, we successfully organized the religious forum Peace to Your Home, which brought together spiritual leaders of the federal entities of the Russian Federation and from abroad. This is the answer to your question from the civilizational point of view. And speaking about the foreign relations in general, I have just mentioned the presentation of the Republic of Dagestan on the platform of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, GLAV UPDK, which is a subordinate structure to the Foreign Ministry. This won't be a presentation for the people of Moscow, but for the diplomatic corps. They will see for themselves the rich potential of the Republic of Dagestan. The great number of forums are organized in the Republic of Dagestan in full. The digital forum will also be held there with the international participation. These are just some of examples. This is not the matter of the future, because the experience of Dagestan is successfully used in foreign relations of Russia between the eastern states in the context of the coexistence of religions and cultures. The region increases and boosts its ties with the Organization for Islamic Cooperation. Dagestani universities provide education for students from Syria, Yemen, Sudan. They come back home not only with their graduation certificates, but with the understanding what the advantages of this interconfession dialogue is like. This is only a brief review. Do you have any other questions? This is it. Thank you very much. We are moving forward. Now we will ask a question from the video conference Международная жизнь. Are you with us? Madam Zakharova, you mentioned the sanction pressure. It seems like that our counterparts won't be satisfied soon. They decided to introduce another package of anti-Russia sanctions and to isolate Russia. What would you say about this? It is not an aggressive Russophobia. It is an insane, a complete mad Baltic states phobes, because they introduce additional sanctions against Russia, and this damages their own interests. They do not simply hate Russia, it means that they hate their own states. Their own states are natural historic neighbors of Russia, and they have always been. They have always been now promising natural partners of Russia. Perhaps not for Russia, but they are such partners for us, and they cut them away from the resource base, from the markets, from humanitarian scientific cooperation. They cut them off from all of this. What for? Perhaps they made a scientific discovery, a scientific invention, which was nurtured by this Russophobic ideology. Perhaps this was the case. Nothing of this kind. Take any sphere of life. They have the so-called anti-achievements. In my mind, first and foremost, one should understand that this now is beyond Russophobia. And this is a Baltic states phobia. When we mention the statements of the authorities of these Baltic states aimed at introducing more destructive measures on our shared European continent. On the other hand, perhaps we should turn the blind eye to these statements because they take these positions on a temporary basis. These are not people who are elected by their own people. They come according to the lists. Their own people do not appreciate their actions. They come according to the lists from the European Union and the NATO offices. There is another point here. The destructive line pursued by Riga Vilnius, and this destructive line triggered a massive population outflow from their states. They present their statements as a nation-oriented policy, and it is not the case. And you can see the result. This population outflow triggers not only in damaging and destroying the economy, in destroying education, science, culture, and the society, their whole community. These trends will persist and they will become stronger and more tangible. Russia will further consolidate its ties with the world majority, those who choose to follow the common sense, no matter how badly they want to achieve their targets and how rampant these Russophobic trends become. We follow our own path. We seek peaceful coexistence. We respect the international law, and we want international cooperation, peace, and friendship. Do you have any other questions? Yes, I have one more. If I may, please do. On May the 19th, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Moldova, Paphos, when speaking about the situation in Ukraine, stated that Russia understands only the language of strength, the language of force, and does not seek peace. What would you say of this? Perhaps Paphos meant his own language. It is difficult for me to comment on this. But I warned everyone that when the Sandu regime starts speaking and opens its mouth, they will receive facts and factual information in response. And these are some guideline books sent from Brussels in order to support this subject on the agenda. Perhaps this is a preparation for the elections. We have drawn the attention on numerous occasions that the military structures of the Moldovan Republic are being drawn into the NATO. They pour Western arms into the Moldovan military. They organize military and technical military exercises which do not serve the interests of Moldova. Let me give you some examples which testify to the policy of militarization. On April the 24th, Brussels announced the new package of military assistance to Chisinau in order to strengthen and consolidate its air defense capability. The National Army of Moldova received another package of military equipment and gear, including mine clearance equipment, special transport drones, bulletproof jackets, and others. On May the 15th, in Berlin, they signed an intergovernmental agreement between Moldova and Germany in order to provide financial assistance and sending a consultation group of the Ministry of Defense of Germany in order to speed up the modernization of the military sector. Why are they doing this? In order to make Moldova sink. On May the 20th, the European Union Council adopted the solution to extend the mandate of the partnership mission of the European Union to Moldova for 2 more years up to May 31st, 2027, in order to provide the security of Moldova. What is Moldovan security like? What is the foundation of this? It is education, employment, of course, good neighborly relations with their neighbors. Of course, we understand that they are neighbors with the Kiev regime, but this is not the target and the goal of all this assistance, and who is going to pay for all of this. No one speaks about this, but we will. These are the citizens of Moldova who will have to pay for transforming their own state into another anti-Russia stronghold, because they will have to pay for the service of these many million loans. You remember very well these grants, these awards and others, and common people of Moldova, those people who strive to earn for their living, they will pay for these loans. And they will pay these sums of the assistance aimed at militarization. This has nothing to do with security in this context, and fortunately Moldovan people understand this quite well. Our contacts with them, I met with some of them during the Russian St. Petersburg Legal Forum. They want to get rid of this logic which has to do with militarization, transforming themselves into the so-called stronghold to serve no understandable reason. And they understand that their security is possible only through mutual respect and mutually beneficial cooperation, including with Russia. And they understand this from theory, not from theory, but from practice. They remember their history and they separate between the true and the false. And once again, as soon as Mr. Paphos promoted this initiative and started speaking about the use of force against the Russian Federation, he used the cliches made up by the West regarding the strategic defeat of Russia. And perhaps he doesn't remember that any attempts of the use of force against Russia ended up with a complete failure for the West. They do not know how to recover from the economic crisis. They are running around the world with their delegations to recover their own economy, but there is nothing to recover with such aggressive thoughts in their mind. Why do they involve Moldova in all these actions? Being the citizens of Moldova, at least on paper. But as far as I understand, most of them, the majority are the citizens of some other states. This is a destructive policy, but we will respond to it.
Let's give the word to our foreign colleagues. Al-Mashad with us. Yes, I can see you. Good afternoon. The West continues to introduce sanctions against Russia. You commented on it already. Despite all peaceful efforts from Russia, the sanctions continue. What does Moscow think about the sanctions? How they can influence to continuation of peaceful efforts? You know, the sanctions started against Russia not in 2022. They were introduced directly and aggressively since 2014, but they also were in place before that. We couldn't fully participate in formats while we were full-fledged members. Think about it. Remember this. We didn't have possibility even within G8 to participate in the work of the economic cluster. Isn't it the indirect sanctions, when it came to real economic decisions, we couldn't participate. It's not the only example. For example, endless ideas in the US how to restrict trade with Russia and economic ties. The amendment of Jackson-Vanik that it was adopted during the Cold War to give the possibility to Jews to leave the USSR. Many of them came back to the Russian Federation after the USSR dissolved, but the amendment was still in effect. It took a decade to overcome this mentality and to stop this amendment. But after a couple of years or a couple of months, the Magnitsky law and others were introduced. It was politically motivated, based on the aspiration to violate Russia's rights and to prevent us to fully participate in all formats. They used indirect sanctions and restrictions. When the situation in 2015 started with sanctions, we talked that they were anti-Russian, but since 2022, they moved to a full-fledged trade war. Now they have a new status. Those are not only anti-Russian sanctions, but these sanctions against the whole global community. They harm logistics, the problems with payments, blocking of accounts, sanctions replicate themselves to third countries. The story with how the sanctions can be used indirectly. They harm the whole international community. But what's the most surprising thing? Now they adopt sanctions and they do understand that they act counterproductively for their own countries. I cannot remember something like this. They enthusiastically destroy their own economies. How do we respond to this? We encourage our own industry and economy. We find partners from the countries of the global majority. We build relations, economic relations with them, and we compensate the losses that we suffer from the sanctions. We will always going to respond in the way that is beneficial for us. On a large scale, will bring our economy to a new level. Everybody should understand that it's not going to be the way it used to be. And we always will remember how the West betrayed us, and not only us, but the whole global majority. Thanks to you. You can do anything you want. So it is Dagestan, and guests allowed to do a lot of things here. About the Russian base Khmeimim in Syria, it was attacked by drones, and Russian soldiers were killed because of it. Is there a real threat for Russian soldiers in Syria? Are there any ultimate agreements about Russian bases in Syria with the new authorities in Damascus? This question is in competence of the Defense Ministry, and they will be able to answer to your questions. As a representative of the MFA, I can say that Russia is prepared to build Russia-Syria ties effectively. We want to realize the certain possibilities that we have in our relations. Our leadership said many things about Russia's presence, military presence there, but it's in the competence of the Defense Ministry. So, something like that. Let's move on. Yes, please. The youth of Dagestan newspaper. Many African countries in modern realities are drawn to Russia. They see a reliable partner in Russia, not a new colonizer that wants to enrich itself. But not all the not all the African countries have Russian embassies and consulates. What are plans of the ministry to better be represented diplomatically in the African region? It's beneficial for our business as well. I would like to draw your attention to the statements on the occasion of the Day of Africa by Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. There was a reception organized by the MFA. It featured all the evaluations of this situation in Russia-Africa relations. Second, as to our presence on the African continent, diplomatic presence, it's getting bigger. In 2023, 2024, our embassies were opened in Burkina Faso and Equatorial Guinea. In December 2024, the government of the Russian Federation made decisions to renew activities of Russia's embassies in Niger and Sierra Leone, as well as to establish an embassy in South Sudan. Right now, the work to open these diplomatic missions started to take real steps, and in future we not only have plans but real actions. The expansion of our presence and prospects for it is an important contribution to trade and economic and investment interaction with African countries, and as well as in other spheres. I would like to underline one more important thing. This is a two-way road, and we note and we respond to those calls of the African countries to make our dialogue more active. Many times in various formats, while working in the Russian mission at to the UN, while talking to various diplomats, heard the phrase from African diplomats, "Go back as soon as possible, amplify your presence here. Africa needs Russia. We need the balance in the world." It's not only about investments, about support, it's about the balance. Who, if not the African continent, knows that the one center of decision-making, one center of power that was self-declared to be dominant, they have known this throughout their history, not from history books, but from life. They know what countering factors mean and see our country as a partner, as an ally, and as a balancing power. They see our position at the UN Security Council and in a number of regional issues, and they draw their own conclusions. They understand that the constructive role played by our country during the USSR era in the African affairs, and even before that, before the USSR, during the Russian Empire, Africa did not see anything bad from Russia. It's a huge factor for them. They want more our presence there, and we respond to this. We hold forums and summits, Russia, Africa, and ministerial meetings. This is not only classic diplomacy and protocol. We do real things in various tracks, from investment forums, educational forums, women's conferences. There are non-governmental meetings, journalists discuss things. This is based on mutual interest of Russia and African friends to build dialogue further. It will be continued. Thanks to you. Let's move on. Is Vestia with us? It will be joining us online. MFA of Poland says that it gave to the Russian side the note because of dismantling of bas relief in the memorial complex Medne in the Tver region. Did Moscow receive it? Will it react to this in some way? Can you please repeat your question? The Polish MFA say that it sends to the Russian side the note following the dismantling of bas reliefs of Polish military decorations from the memorial complex Medne. Indeed, we received this note. There was a statement from the Polish MFA on this topic. We already commented on it. I already said that all those protests look cynical and hypocritical, because they consistently, for many years, destroy Russian memorials and they do it because they, in a targeted way, with the agreement of authorities in some cases. And this is a special cynicism, because the note mentions bilateral documents providing for the preservation of burial sites and memorial places. Russia, for many years, has mentioned this and cited those documents, but what Warsaw ignored them. I have nothing to add to this. Thanks to you. Is Ria Dagestan with us? Good afternoon, colleagues, Madam Zakharova. I would like to ask you the following question. What are the prospects for Russia's cooperation with Middle Eastern and Caucasus countries in security and counter-terrorism? It is very important. Thanks. Thank you. You know, we consistently promote the idea that it is necessary to form a just world order that responds to the interests of universal and indivisible security. In this context, we give special importance to the development of relations with the Middle East, in the Caucasus region, first of all in the UN and international regional platforms like SCO, CIS, CSTO. Russia and the Middle Eastern countries maintain sustainable cooperation on a wide range of issues based on common approaches to key global and regional issues. Given, unfortunately, high level of conflict and crisis factors in the region, we and these countries, including Syria and Iraq, have intensive dialogue in countering terrorism and radicalism. You see that the situation remains quite difficult in Syria. They experience problems with statehood building, with sovereignty. There's a serious threat from terrorist groups operating in the country. We hope that the new Syrian leadership will make active steps to stop their activities and to ultimately resolve the issue of foreign terrorist fighters that are a threat not only to Syria but to the region in general and the whole world. Unfortunately, because of them, the region have favorable conditions for these criminals. We think that Syria has no place for people stained with blood. They have nothing to do with the Syrian people. We support the efforts of the Iraqi government in counterterrorism and want to develop cooperation on this track. Thanks to effective measures of the authorities, we manage the terrorist activity of ISIS is curbed. We oppose any interference into internal affairs of this country. Unfortunately, new hot spots and exacerbation of the military and political situation in the Middle East is caused by destructive policy of the Western countries to forming dividing lines, encouraging regional disputes, a weaker authority in the countries of the region crisis there lead to terrorism spilling over. We maintain active dialogue with the Caucasus partners to strengthen security in the region. We maintain close cooperation with Azerbaijan, Armenia, Abkhazia, South Ossetia in counterterrorism. There's a legal basis that works effectively between our law enforcement bodies and special services of our countries. We build up this work in counterterrorism, and there's mutual interest in it, and there's more prospect for this as well. Let's move on. Is author E with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova, Ruslan Pankratov. We have two questions today. First of all, if I may, we would like to thank the embassies of the General Consulate in Dubai. Our journalists were there, and those facilities that were investigated by them managed to lie to the local policemen, but thanks to our diplomats, everything was resolved. Thanks.
Of course, I'll talk personally to my colleagues in Dubai. Thank you for your words. I can only reaffirm that indeed the staff is very professional there and is not indifferent to these issues. And I'm going to use your question and say that all journalists, doesn't matter the writing or shooting, some footages or bloggers who are headed to the to UAE should know in detail the legislation. They should clearly know the possibilities to conduct their professional duties. Sometimes they don't know some details, they don't understand what's going on, and as you noted, incompetences and maybe malafide intermediaries' intentions can play a bad joke with them, can turn out bad for them. And something that seems to be insignificant may turn out very significant violations, and we have faced such cases. Therefore, I would say that in the not too distant future, we will complete the comprehensive document on what injunctions exist for the work of journalists in this country. Please ask your question. One of the questions touches upon the UAE. In February this year, an agreement was signed between the governments of Russia and UAE to eliminate double taxation and prevention of tax evasion. In this regard, should our people who relocated expect, and people as well as people who hide their capitals from bankruptcies and creditors on the territory of UAE, that the tax service of UAE will give information to the Federal Tax Service of Russia? Well, we should base our work on mutual agreements between our agencies and create favorable conditions so that they don't pay double taxes if they're residents of both countries. I can only say that this is the mandate of the Ministry of Finance, and I think that you should refer to this agency for details. Representing the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia, I can only call upon adhering to the legislation of the Russian Federation. Thank you very much. I have another question. Does Russia continue to follow the situation with forced people who were forcibly relocated from Nagorno-Karabakh? Moscow and Russian non-governmental organizations send humanitarian aid there. Do you plan any other supplies and any humanitarian aid? Can you comment on this? Can I do I understand correctly? You're asking about the Nagorno-Karabakh. Yes, correct. This humanitarian issue is in the focus of the Russian side, and in the not too distant future, we are planning a large-scale humanitarian actions through one of the domestic public organizations, namely the Russian Humanitarian Mission. The Armenian side is also touching upon this issue, namely through the Republican branch of the Eurasia organizations. And you remember that the Russian Humanitarian Mission already sent humanitarian aid to Armenia. It happened in October 2023. And people in Karabakh received 6 tons of supplies and sanitary products. Thank you very much, and I wish you a good stay in Dagestan. Thank you. And do we have Media Corporation of China? Yeah. Madam Zakharova, thank you very much. The U.S. just published their plan to elaborate space-based missile defense system, the Golden Dome. This plan to be brought in full combat readiness in the next 3 years. The Golden Dome will be integrated into the existing capabilities of missile defense of the U.S. After the completion of the construction, it can intercept missiles. China said that this plan violates the principle of peaceful use enshrined in the Outer Space Treaty. It will strengthen the risk of war in the outer space and arms race, and will destabilize international security situation, arms control. What's the attitude of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia? Russia and China, as far as principal aspects of strategic stability go, converge or are very similar. Following the recent Russian-Chinese meeting at the highest level, a joint statement was issued containing global strategic stability views of our countries, and this document focuses greatly on U.S. plans to create the Golden Dome for America. It is noted this program provides for the creation of unlimited global and multi-area missile defense system, and I quoted, for the protection from strategic Russian and Chinese missiles. It has a destabilizing character. The conceptual framework of the aforementioned projects demonstrates a full and final refusal of Washington to recognize an inextricable relationship between strategic offensive and defensive arms. That is one of the pillars that is used to maintain the strategic stability. Just remember how often Russia has been talking about it in the last decades. As part of the Golden Dome construction, it is planned to give an additional impetus to further development of pre-launch destruction of missile weapons and infrastructure that provide their use. It is a tangible expression of an extremely dangerous doctrinal attitude of the U.S. to inflict the so-called preventive, in fact, preemptive strikes. Such an escapade represents a direct undermining of the foundations of the strategic stability. The situation is additionally exacerbated by the fact that the Golden Dome directly provides for a significant strengthening of arsenal to conduct military operations in outer space, including the deployment on the orbit of interception systems. These acts are aimed at ensuring the capability to use force or the threat of force in the outer space from the outer space with regard to space that turns the outer space into the environment for arms deployment in the arena of armed confrontation. The Russian-Chinese initiatives is aimed directly at that. It has been submitted to the global community. It has been promoted in recent years. Under these conditions, we are looking at this task to initiate talks to elaborate a national legally binding instrument on the prevention of an arms race in outer space. Of course, it is becoming even more relevant, so let me reiterate this. We're now talking about not just words, but about practical activity in this area, and we consider as its foundation a draft treaty on the prevention of the placement of weapons in outer space, application of force or threat of force with regard to outer space objects. It was presented by Russia and PRC and the Conference on Disarmament as well. It was adopted by consensus. And adopted by consensus was a comprehensive report of the group of government experts on the prevention of an arms race in outer space that operated in 2023-2024. We're interested in further consolidation of efforts of the international community in this area, and the efforts of the open-ended working group that was established by the decision of the UN General Assembly 79/512 that aims at preventing the arms race in the outer space based on the existing developments. The Russian-Chinese statement says that we, together with our PRC's partners, are ready to step up our coordination approaches and deepen practical cooperation to maintain global strategic stability and to counter current global challenges and threats in this regard. Thank you very much. Thank you, too. Do we have here present? Let's see who else is there who wants to talk. Just raise your hand and you can ask your question. Yes, please. I'm always touching the microphone. Good afternoon, Maria Zakharova, colleagues. I'm representing Dagestan. I'm representing regional NNT channel of Dagestan. Russia has repeatedly sent to Gaza humanitarian aid. Recently, Palestinians died in Gaza who cooperated with the foundation. Are there any agreements with the government of Israel to ensure stability, security of humanitarian aid to Russia, from Russia? This issue has been raised repeatedly during contacts with Israeli officials. You see that the obligation that they took upon themselves is violated with regard to international organizations. We are making corresponding statements. We will continue our work to support the refugees, and we will continue our work with the Israeli side to ensure this aid reaches the addressees. Well, let us move on. Maybe we can answer some online questions. Do we have Xinhua agency with us? No, absent. Do we have Pakistani channel PTV? Hello? Good afternoon. I would like to express my gratitude to the Russian Foreign Ministry and all the regions. Every time we learn new things about Russia, it's very beautiful, and it's getting even more beautiful. And of course, through us, our viewers see different corners of Russia. We only used to know large cities, but my colleagues will reaffirm now that Russia is now known completely from Vladivostok to Kaliningrad, all different corners of this country in a positive regard. My question is, what mechanisms of dialogue exist between India and Pakistan, and which ones do you consider the most effective to reach durable peace in the region? I'm going to respond to the first part of your question. Yes, that's true. in 2014 they started to learn about Russia from the city of Murmansk to the Crimea. Prior to 2014, it was from Kaliningrad to Vladivostok, and now people are learning even more about Russia. We'll help you to do that. As far as India and Pakistan goes, we are favoring the dialogue between two countries and welcome the agreements, the ceasefire agreements reached by New Delhi and Islamabad. We very much hope that it will be of durable and long-standing nature. We hope that the differences between the two countries will be settled through diplomatic and political means on the bilateral basis in accordance with the provisions of the Simla Agreement of 1972 and the Lahore Declaration of 1999. In the normalization of relations between India and Pakistan, we see key to a durable peace and stability in the regions. It's an important factor of stability in international relations and a possibility for these countries to cooperate with the rest of the world without any aggravating component. We also believe that further joint work, including on counterterrorism at international platforms with our joint participation primarily at the SCO, will contribute to establishing constructive Indian-Pakistani cooperation and increasing the level of confidence between South Asian neighboring our good friends. I think this is exactly the case, an example that can be demonstrated in the context of how one should treat conflict, a conflict such as the one we saw. The world is not perfect. The conflicts used to exist and they continue to exist. Well, we have conflicts between allies, friends, partners. You can fuel the conflict. You can pit nations against one another. But you can do the opposite thing. You can help countries unite, and that's what Russia is using and is doing. You can help find solutions. It's our basic approach, and I think you sense it. Just my second question. So I think we heard your answer to it, but I'd like to ask this question again. How does Russia see its role in ensuring security and stability in South Asia, especially in the context of the nuclear potential of both countries? How does Russia see its role in this context? There's a whole number of areas to implement one's own role. For example, permanent members of the UN Security Council. The western part of the UN Security Council is engaged in undermining destructive and irresponsible policies to downplay the role of this institute and in general to destabilize international relations. So there, responsible players like Russia and China are increasing their role, and many are hopeful to see our countries return the work of the Security Council to its productive origin. The UN Security Council, first and foremost, is engaged in ensuring stability and security on our planet. It's one of the tracks that it is involved with, and the second, not least important, is regional security. I have already listed a number of structures that were created with direct participation of the initiative, to a large extent of our country, to resolve issues linked with security, new challenges and threats. Taking into account geographical focus on your question, first and foremost, the SCO that hosts a counter-terrorist component that deals with it, but that's not the only structure that deals with it. And of course, the protection of international law is also very important, because without this, by ignoring international laws, you can run a risk of a global chaos. So talking about preservation of international law, an aspiration towards peace and a multipolar world on the basis of international legal system, one should also talk about a very important component, namely the nuclear component. It should be handled not according to some unknown rules or regulated on the basis of the fact that somebody proclaimed themselves a leader in this regard, but on the basis of a clearly articulated international norms.
Xinhua, are you with us? Colleagues, the screen is not functioning. Xinhua? Well, then we are moving forward. The Moscow Post. Yes, we are here. We have two questions today. First, the Chancellor of Germany now sets the tone for anti-Russia hysteria. They say that the troops of Vilnius protected them from the forces of Russia. What can Russia respond to this rhetoric? Perhaps it would seem funny to you, but yesterday, late at night, I was preparing for the briefing. I was scrolling through the news. I read some materials, and then I received a message with a reference to verified sources that the Vice Chancellor of Germany proved wrong the statement made by the Chancellor. I do not know what they feel there and what they are trying to test, what they are trying to test themselves or on each other. I can say one thing, that you are playing with the fate of Europe. Yesterday, I received a big number of calls with their demand to comment on the statement made by Merz. They cannot be based on some biased opinion on his own ambition. These are the words which were pronounced by the head of state, and they should be based on a well-balanced, legal and responsible position. This does not mean that this position can be only one. There could be different ones. But when saying things of this kind, a person should coordinate what he says with the responsibility for what he says. Many millions of people shivered, I believe, when they heard this message from Berlin that had to do with lethal arms. And some hours afterwards, it turned out that they were misunderstood, that these are some verbal tricks. Perhaps later, the Chancellor of Germany will speak and he will prove wrong the statements made by Vice Chancellor. This is a very important issue. This doesn't even have to do with the deliveries of some seasonal goods, of seasonal products. They are speaking about fates and destinies of millions. They are speaking about life and death of people on the European continent. But frankly, I doubt that the head of the German government has the mandate to make such statements on behalf of other states. He said that this decision was also made by Great Britain, Germany, and France. Perhaps we should be guided by the notion that they have already proved this statement wrong, or other authorities that have to explain who or how decided on this issue. Perhaps Merz decided to engage into self-promotion. He might be not fully aware of what he's doing, or he cannot understand the measure. He does not know the measure. He is not moderate. Perhaps this is his first time in this position. He wants to seem to look strong and this is the act of self-assertion. But this is not the topic when you can make unsubstantiated statements and when you do not understand your responsibility. Speaking about the position of Germany, the decision to lift any limits on the range of the arms, this will drive Berlin even deeper into the abyss of supporting the Kiev regime. They won't be able to say any longer that they are in favor of peace and negotiations. To my mind, no kinds of weaponry from Germany will change the course of the special military operation. You can see the tanks delivered by Germany burning like matches. The Tauruses will burn as well as drones delivered by Germany. They all will face this unfavorable fate and destiny. Merz and his deputies, first and foremost, should say all of this to the people of Germany. They should seek the advice of the people of Germany and to ask them whether they should do this or not, because this costs a lot. The businesses in Germany are escaping the country. They register their enterprises in different states in order to maintain their functions and activities. First and foremost, they should better test these statements and these decisions on their own people, or ask for their consent or approval when it comes to such decisions or even statements, in order not to prove wrong the statements of one another. I have one more question. Ukrainian authorities threaten to launch the process of banning the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Will Russia counter these efforts on the diplomatic front? Of course we will. I think I paid enough attention to this. We will do this on international platforms. We will organize meetings in interstate formats within the UN Security Council. We will organize non-formal meetings, such as area formal meetings, scheduling conferences, preparing reports, and drawing attention of all international authorities at all levels and speaking at all levels, the Human Rights Council, the Third Committee of the UN General Assembly. We send concrete information and data. We distribute them as official materials. We continue these efforts in the OSCE. When it comes to the OSCE, we draw attention to every aspect of persecution of the Orthodox faith. In essence, this is the extermination of Orthodox religion in Ukraine. During the meetings of the OSCE, our diplomats in Vienna, they make presentations, they distribute materials. This subject is blocked there, but this does not mean that we will abandon our efforts. We will only step it up. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from those who attend personally? Anadolu Agency, the ceasefire in Gaza. After that, the army of Israel renewed their attacks. They target the people of Palestine every day. A few days ago, the Israeli army started attacks against diplomats. What do you think of this? These attacks, as many others, they do not even make any contribution to the de-escalation process, but they only aggravate this process. Every state can take decisions when it comes to their security and to guarantee its own security, but what we are seeing in the zone of the conflict that you have mentioned has to do with the humanitarian catastrophe. It is even more than a catastrophe. It is a shameful phenomenon of today, which led to deaths of a dramatic number of civilians, of innocent people. I cannot know how to separate from male and female in this regard. Perhaps female are less protected, but first and foremost I would like to mention the number of children who died in this time span. That is why we are in contact with the Israeli side. We communicate our opinion in this regard. We publish all the statements. We carry out the corresponding efforts on international platforms. Perhaps we should not speak about our reaction or response to some particular attack perpetrated by the armed forces. The steps they have taken, but the approach in general. Thank you very much. The first information channel of Belarus, are you with us? Good afternoon. Today, many states want to be involved. I'm sorry for the interruption. I do like these statements made by the West that they want to be at the negotiation table, but all their actions, including those in the train which was driving them back from Kiev, perhaps they should reserve a seat under the table. You should take a critical view to oneself. To elaborate on the subject, they want to be involved in the negotiations. Switzerland, Vatican, they demonstrated their interest. However, many of my colleagues said that for everyone's benefit, the negotiations should be held in Minsk. Perhaps these are your colleagues from Belarus. First, it is logistics. Second, there should be no visas, and Minsk has a rich experience in providing its capital as a platform for negotiations in 2014, in 2020 as well. From your point of view, can Minsk be considered as a platform for negotiations, or this does not serve the interests of Ukraine and they will do everything possible to complicate the negotiation process? Your question has many components. For instance, you mentioned Switzerland, which continues for some reason in the information and the public media space. It states and it asserts its neutral status. Some months ago, in Sochi, we organized the Valdai Forum, and it discussed this topic. I was a speaker there, and I was asked a question. What does Russia think of the neutral status of Switzerland, its mediation capacity and potential? You won't be able to imagine the shock of political scientists from Switzerland when I said that Russia no longer considers Switzerland to be a neutral state, and it did not start this year. We provided a good number of facts, so we started not from some general statements. We commented on concrete steps of the official capital, of the official policy, and this eliminates the neutral status of Switzerland. And only afterwards we came to general conclusions. It became a revelation to them. Initially, they thought that it was a joke, that I was not speaking in earnest, and later they reiterated their question. It was embarrassing to them, and they continued to pose this question to the foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, and he confirmed that we are no longer considering Switzerland to be a neutral state, but perhaps they wanted to test him somehow. However, all the time they received the same answer. But when you say that you are a neutral state, when you do not actively take sides, that you see the root causes of a crisis and that it is willing to do something in order to find a way out from the crisis and to do this in a peaceful way, and that the ultimate goal is peace. This all should be substantiated and confirmed by facts and by concrete actions. We see no concrete actions from Switzerland, only anti-Russia sanctions. It has no obligations. Switzerland imposes these sanctions on a voluntary basis. The strategic silence regarding everything that has to do with the humanitarian situation. Originally, Switzerland was involved in humanitarian efforts. It is the headquarters for the humanitarian department of the United Nations, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and now they pretend not to see anything what is going on. Take the Kursk region. The Kursk region saw the atrocities it had not seen during the Great Patriotic War perpetrated by the Nazis. How could anyone think about Switzerland being an intermediary and the place for negotiations between Russia and Ukraine? Minister Lavrov has mentioned this on numerous occasions, and we brought this question to a broader scale. How could the states which could not demonstrate these efforts as mediators, we speak about the mediating capacity as an ability, as a skill, they have an obligation to provide for the work of delegations, and they cannot fulfill this task properly. Many diplomats were unable to come to Switzerland because they received no logistic capacity and capability for participation. That is why this is out of the question. Speaking about Minsk, you justly mentioned that Belarus has experience in organizing negotiations on Ukrainian crisis, but besides experience, they are willing to do so. We see that the people of Belarus and the authorities of Belarus sympathize with what is happening in the region as our brothers. This was stated on numerous occasions by the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, and I believe that the people of Belarus has the same attitude. In 2014, Minsk became the platform where important agreements were reached. They had all chances to stabilize the crisis and to prevent the escalation. Let me remind you that they were approved by the UN Security Council resolution as legally binding for all the parties. Minsk also received the contact groups meetings. They provided all conditions for the dialogue with the mediation of the OSCE and others. This was not a one-time occasion. It is not an only multi-formated participation in the mediation efforts and creating the environment for work, which are very complicated. After the start of the special military operation, Minsk was the first to offer mediation services to organize direct talks between Russia and Ukraine. Back then, the 3 rounds of negotiations took place. We appreciate the assistance of Belarus in the humanitarian dimension. Every time we see that Belarus, Minsk, and the people of Belarus provide its facilitating services in bringing back the prisoners of war from Ukraine back to Russia. Now I'm speaking about our gratitude, our boundless gratitude towards the people of Belarus. On May the 23rd, on the border with Belarus, we organized the prisoner swap, the largest one in history. And of course, the authorities and the representatives of governmental structures of the Republic of Belarus invested a good amount of efforts into this endeavor. And this is a noble and decent mission. However, the decision will be taken by the authorities, so we are moving forward.
Is Sinha with us? If not, then Virelk. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to you. I have one question today. Recently, Sergei Lavrov visited Yerevan. I would like to ask, he said that ministers talked frankly, without any misunderstandings. That's what I would like to know. Whether the Armenian authorities explained why organizations affiliated with them were involved in organizing overwhelming Russian action protests during the visit of Sergei Lavrov to Yerevan. I would like to say that the official evaluations of the negotiations were given by Sergei Lavrov. I cannot add more to this. I was not there. I went to St. Petersburg for the legal forum. I cannot give more specific answer. We commented even before the visit on all of these performances, and the money go from the same people. The same people are involved. We understand this. We understand who wants it. We know who wants to exacerbate disputes on the post-Soviet space. Everything is clear. Second, about Russian general consulates in Sunica, this issue was discussed in great detail during the negotiations. We know that it is necessary to launch these missions as soon as possible. There is no general consulate there, but you should ask for more details from the Armenian side. And you had one more question, if I'm not mistaken, about the work within the CSTO. Sergei Lavrov, during the press conference, during the public events, talked about it. We continue to proceed from the fact that the Republic is a full-fledged member of the organization with all rights and commitments. Nothing new happened since the visit. Thanks to you. Do we have questions here? Thanks, Madam Zakharova. Good afternoon. This press tour is very important and useful. As to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, are there any time frame and plans to continue negotiations? How can you explain the fact that, probably sabotage is not the right word for this, that the Brussels and European officials sabotage this process? How do you objectively evaluate the stance of the European leaders? Are they adequate? Oh, I see. I have to objectively evaluate if they're adequate. You know, this event is public, so I cannot give any evaluations the way I would like to, actually. In the scriptures, various nations, peoples, in myths and legends, have the same very words. Those who have eyes can see, those who have ears can hear, and you every day can see online how adequate they are. But this is not the point. It's all about lies that they tell all the time. Everything can happen. We found ourselves in unpleasant situations all the time because of ourselves or because there are provocations. But you shouldn't lie. You should say the truth about what happened. And when the whole global community saw not from somebody else's words, but saw things that are usually seen in films to show drug users. And we were convinced that it is us who come up with fakes and that we spread them. This is not adequacy, because this method of not even justification but of lies was chosen. Then you saw a set of events in the same line. Second, you ask if this is the reason why they sabotage or do something close to this, the developments in Ukraine. Within days after the statement of the MFA, our MFA, about attacks on civilian facilities, he made some follow-up comment on those statements and said that this continues the policy of Biden. But why? Because they were taken to power by the same powers or for forces affiliated with these forces, because they are waiting to have a rematch, because the previous U.S. administration did not recognize the defeat on the elections in 2022. And everybody is waiting for how it's going to happen. Third, I think that it is unclear how they got to these positions. Their professional level isn't backed by anything substantial. Their public and political activities could not take them to these positions. They don't know history. It cannot be qualified as anything other than that. They are not people, personalities with an agenda. They are also tools of this global liberal dictatorship. Sometimes they take inadequate steps and to make inadequate statements. They sometimes even don't know what they're saying about. Look at the statements of the President of France and people who work for him, French diplomats as well. They contradict each other, not only to our words, but to each other. It is not clear who says who. I talked about the words of Chancellor of Germany, and his words were debunked by his deputy. And this is strange. This phenomenon has a lot of reasons. And this situation for Europe was predicted not in this century, but not even in the last century, but in the century before the last century. There's no sense using stronger words. But that's the situation where liberal dictatorship finds itself in. The will of majority is distorted by the shenanigans of minority. The law is trampled upon by political, as they say, narratives. Human rights are only words to push for their own interests. Morals and values are not there. Those are quite general words, but that's where we have to look for the answer. Are there any more questions? The truth of Dagestan. Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. What place does Moscow give to Dagestan in development of economic relations with the friendly countries? I talked about it today. We welcome the efforts of the authorities of the Republic to diversify its foreign economic and international ties, development of export potential, searching for new partners. This is facilitated by the economic situation and geography of Dagestan in the south of Russia. It borders 5 states and historically is located on trade paths. There's automobile, railway infrastructure. The Republic is an important logistics component of the international transport corridor, north-south. To continue development of transit and industrial capabilities. There are new investment projects providing for new transport and logistics centers, capabilities to process agricultural products. Business here explores markets of IT services. This is a good reason for international cooperation. Within national projects to develop the Caucasus, the ports and the airport of MAKHACHKALA are going to be modernized. As many experts says, there are a lot of prospects, and Russian MFA supports this. We are in close contact through our office and directly with administration. We provide Dagestan with all support it needs so that the Republic can use effectively all their capabilities and to and possibilities. At various historic stages, we have been working. There's going to be a presentation of the region, and those only the tips of the iceberg of the work that takes place on the daily basis with our missions, with the coordination role of the ministry. Contacts are established, issues are resolved. Some work, analytical work is done. So we work every day quite closely.
Do we have Голос Отечества, the voice of the fatherland, with us? Yes. Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Good afternoon. Can you see me? Well, I cannot see you, but I can hear you. Now I can see you as well. We have the following question regarding military expenses that are on the rise globally in 2021. They amounted to $2.1 trillion. In 2024, these expenses, let me see. The expenses increased, and according to the forecasts, by 2024, this number can double. So we can see rising tensions globally. Do we have any opportunity in Russia to ensure our security and to not allow the world to be dragged into this large-scale Third World War? Yes, there is such a possibility. Well, I'm answering your question, but what kind of a possibility is that? Well, there was hope. First, I can comment on it further, elaborate if you want. No, it's fine. I'm going to elaborate on it myself. Of course, in geopolitical and military planning, although I think it should be our defense ministry and other services' prerogative who should present detailed answers, but let me briefly dwell on this subject. In its planning, both military and geopolitical, Russia relies on the analysis of constantly evolving threats and facts. We focus especially on the risks of undermining strategic stability. I have mentioned today the Russian-Chinese statement of May 8th that can provide you with concrete examples on how we respond by using political and diplomatic measures in particular. This statement, if you can remember it, U.S. steps and other nuclear states' steps are outlined. These risks and threats can be curbed by countermeasures to resume the strategic balance or by political and diplomatic measures. The first measure is being implemented by Russia, and the detailed analysis can be provided by defense and military agencies of our country. As far as political and diplomatic measures go, we are taking the steps together with our allies. That's what I have just mentioned. You are talking about non-allies, or those who represent non-friendly regimes. Maybe the conditions are not ripe yet for conducting a dialogue. As far as the fruitful dialogue with the U.S. goes, to discuss factors of stability will require, and it was mentioned by the leadership of our country, a reliable political basis that provides for the normalization of bilateral relations, including material manifestation of them and the readiness of Washington to respect core interests of Russia and to eliminate root causes of principled differences, and in no small part in terms of security. It is of great concern what we see in Europe. Their elites and NATO countries as well are promoting the notion of a future war, large-scale war with Russia. They're dreaming of it literally. That's the direct way to confrontation that is it runs counter to the international peace and security, and they're saying it with no connection whatsoever to the will of their peoples. They hold elections in European countries. Political leaders have their platforms. They never say about a future large-scale war, vote for it. Well, it's the opposite. By the way, they are favoring and fomenting pacific notions, pacifism. They assure their voters that they will ensure security on the continent, but once they come to power, they start talking about future wars and such. They're not talking to people. They're not asking them their opinion. They're just lying to them. Let me give you Switzerland as an example. Maybe you're aware of it, maybe not, but you should read it up. Switzerland has a system of referendums that they hold on any for every reason. Maybe they want to mount a fence close to the road. Well, they hold referendums within a neighborhood, a district, a region, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't matter what the reason is. Something that touches upon the day-to-day life of the country requires a referendum. Many countries can only dream of it, but they have this system established. They have had it for many years now. The principles solution to change the life not within a district but on the whole continent of Europe is being made by Bern without even a hint to hold consultations with the people. I'm pretty confident. Just ask this question on a referendum in Switzerland about a large-scale war. People would say that you're crazy. We are only willing to have a peace here. So these are attempts to increase military spending. That's what behind these statements. Then realize these funds, the Westerners are doing it pretty well at a large scale. Together with Zelensky, they're trying to score points within NATO structures and ensure future posts. We can see that also, and we have seen it repeatedly. One cannot help but notice the following thing. We can see how money is being taken away to the benefit of military complex, and we see economic downturn that could easily be forecast given the anti-Russian sanctions were imposed. Now, the only way to reach their goal for them is to fuel funds into their military budgets. That's where militarization comes from. To a large extent, their military spending has now been unprecedented amid the economic downturn, and they do it at the expense of just common taxpayers. But they need this threat emanating from Russia allegedly for their practical purposes. But by demonizing Russia, NATO alliance has unfolded preparations for a large-scale war. NATO structures are now not responding to crises, but they prepare for high-intensity hostilities with an enemy who has comparable forces. They are unfolding troops in the Eastern Front, in the Baltics, and in the Black Sea. They deploy transport and rear infrastructure, different armaments, and they're just crazy, saying that the Baltic Sea will become a domestic, internal sea of NATO. During the combat readiness exercises of United Joint NATO forces, they focus on countering Russia close to Russian borders. Around 50 events are being held with, and they attract 300,000 troops to do that. They lay out details about those exercises. This is the determination of NATO countries to have confrontation with Russia and of stepping up this confrontation with Russia. This increases risks of head confrontation. All these consequences are being taken into account while outlining the strategy of national security. would like to turn back to Russian approaches as far as international affairs go. You can ask the citizens of these countries, ask them the following: do they know what their governments are going to do to them? And 80 years ago, the governments just blindly pushed them towards a global war. And do they remember how that ended? But they are destroying monuments to forget everything, and they're rewriting their history books to forget all of that. Do we have any other questions from the audience? If there are no more questions, do we have any questions from the audience that is online? No? All right, then I bid you farewell and thank you very much. I would like to thank the Republic of Dagestan and the administration of the Republic for a perfect, to my mind, organization and the structure of the briefing. Thank you very much. I'll see you again soon. Take care.